get your experiences, Darren, and hopefully the audience can take nuggets away, apply it to their lives, and hopefully make moving from surviving to thriving. That's the ultimate goal. So I'd
Nice.
love for you to kind of kick off for people who may not know a little bit about you, just kind of your background and how you got into the whole film industry.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah.
We just recently met in the last week or two, so it's cool that it turns into a conversation so quickly. The magic of the internet. I love
Yes.
it. So yeah, I'm Darren. I'm a independent film producer. I've done four films, feature-length films over the last 4 years. Three of them went into theaters. We had two of them in theaters last year at the same time, which was kind of
Cool.
bonkers.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing full time right now is the job or the role of an independent film producer. But my background, I've been an author. I've been a TV producer. I've run a video production company. Before all of that, I was in post-production sound and live sound and music as a performer. So we can go anywhere, but I'm guessing we're going to focus on the indie film stuff.
Yeah, that's probably the best avenue. I tried to hit creatives at large, but as you know, you try to hit everybody, you hit no one. So at minimum, I personally look through the lens of an independent filmmaker myself, and that's generally
Mhm.
where I'd like to go. But I think a lot of people that are creatives can apply it to many things. But generally, it's kind of the lens of a filmmaker. And it's not just I've found no longer an American audience, it's really become an international audience so that
Yeah,
people, it's really anybody outside of the Hollywood construct. How can we get our stories told?
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, this will be fun.
Yeah, no, I would love for you to maybe talk about I always have learned the most from my failures. You know, I've learned the most from my failures. And I found now being 52 that those were actually essential components to my learning experience. What mistakes have you made or see others making in the independent space that you would like to bring light to and maybe some caution to of like, oh man, if you just did this other thing, that would be extremely helpful, or you wouldn't hit that landmine. Do you have any insights into potential mistakes that indies filmmakers make?
Yeah, how much time do you have? And that's just for my own stories, not even just the things I see in the
Yeah.
industry now. So I think one of the big ones is not knowing the destination before you set off on the journey.
Hmm.
And so there's this idea of you really need both where you are, like clarity on where you are right now, not thinking you're actually here when you're really down here. I shouldn't say down here, but like if you
Yeah.
think you're 10 miles in, but you're really just at the starting line, those are very different points on a journey.
Yeah.
But if you just start wandering and hope that you find the destination, that's unrealistic, right?
Yeah.
So now I tell people like the thing that I'm working towards is a truly independent film ecosystem.
Hmm.
I'm starting with myself and the people that I work with, but I'm also sharing the process along the way. I feel like it's important to be a guide of sorts. And so I'm kind of doing some of the wayfinding and like leaving little rocks on the side of the path saying go this way, right? And so I do a lot of writing and podcasting like this because I just love talking about it. But I feel like it's helpful because I'm what 18 years into this career of mine and I've learned a lot of stuff that I wish I could tell myself 18, 15, 12, even 5 years ago. And so without that destination of like what does a truly independent film ecosystem look like?
Hmm.
With as much clarity as I can get at this point, and it gets clearer every day because I get closer and closer to it. Without that aim or that goal or that outcome, it's really hard to know if the next step you're taking is going to get you closer or take you further away. So that's a big thing for my own life, but also for that I see a lot in the industry. The second I would touch on is the idea that yes, we're in a creative industry. Yes, the core of what we do is our art or our craft or our creative work. But if we neglect the realities that we're also in a business environment, then that causes a lot of struggle and frustration and heartache. And that's where a lot of people find me because I'm talking about this stuff and I'm saying, here, let me help you navigate the terrain here in the indie film world. And they go, great, like I'm 30 feet down because an avalanche just hit me. And it's like, oh, okay, well, there's things you could have known to prevent you from even being in avalanche terrain where you're not on a slope that's 30 degrees or greater, where it's not even possible to have avalanches. So a lot of the writing I'm doing now for filmmakers specifically is let me help you understand the business principles that are at play, like the laws of nature in this space. Let me help you navigate the terrain because it's uncertain and it's complex and it changes every single time you take a new step. And it changes when a studio makes a decision that impacts indie filmmakers. Like it's
Yeah.
constantly changing. So how do you navigate that? And a big shift is helping people understand you're not just an individual creator. You are a business. And
Mm.
so you've got to adapt or adopt rather some of those principles and mindsets that will help you succeed in business, not just at your craft.
Yeah, that's excellent. I see the same thing as well, and I would certainly echo a lot of your points. Kind of starting with the end in mind, film. So I had this new venture I've been working on called Concept Compass, and it's really trying to help greenlight projects from an independent filmmaker lens. And what I'm really trying to do is product market fit. Does the audience want what we're making? Because we as independents blame Hollywood for a lot of things, and Hollywood
Mm-hmm.
gets stuff wrong, but they also get stuff right. And one of the things I think independents do wrong is we don't vet our stories. We all know story is king. We've been taught that from the beginning, but we all think our script is great and we have no validation that it is. And next thing you know, I have worked on, been hired on, and helped projects that inherently deep down I knew were probably not going to find an audience. And I tried as as much as you can to do that, but starting with the end in mind and with our ever evolving system, and given your experience, and I love the fact that you have theatrical experience as well. A couple years ago, I was fortunate enough to get a film into theaters as well. That I think that was number two, number three. It's always very validating. We don't make films to be read; they're intended to be seen. So that audience completion is the complete arc of our story.
Yeah.
Of creation. How do you see the traditional role of distribution and our current construct, the channels, evolving in a digital streaming platform? And, I think the obvious thing in the room, not to potentially, and you can broach it, not broach it, and I know it's a sensitive subject, but obviously AI is in front of us. We don't need to go in that direction, but I really just want to see the distribution. I mean, it just seems like Netflix, oh, they're so strong. From what I see, the economics, they're not doing great economically because they have so much debt out. Disney stocks keep plummeting. Hollywood says they're going to make less films, but bank on IP and spend more money in them. So that's less chances for us. But supply and demand. Demand has never been higher because the global supply is low. This seems like a great time to get in, man, as an independent, but you got to have distribution in mind. What are your thoughts there?
I want to focus on one of the first things you said there, which was I want to know if there's an audience for what we're doing.
Right.
And maybe you've worded it differently, but like this is a
That's
big
it.
idea, like a
Yes.
foundational idea. And the what happens is most creators, let's just use filmmakers because that's who we're talking to here. Most filmmakers approach this business from a supply side
Yes.
mindset. They go, here's an idea that I have. I think it's really good. I like it a lot. So I'm going to see if the marketplace feels the same way.
That's
So they
right.
go out and pitch it, they try to raise money. If they can do all that, then they produce it and then they try to put it in theaters. They try to find the audience at the end.
That's right.
And like you said, they realize often that there is not the demand that they hoped. And it's crushing because they're going, well, this is me. This is
Yes.
part of me. This is part of like, if you don't like this, you don't like me.
Mm.
It's so connected.
Yeah.
And that's really hard because we're fragile creatures when we're in our
Yeah.
creative brains, right? We're just going, please validate this.
Yeah.
Please like me. Tell me that this is good enough. And again, nothing wrong with that. That's how you do creative work. But as soon as you're talking about taking that creative work to a marketplace, you have to shift the mindset. And so the mindset to adopt is demand side mindset. So instead of saying, here's what I have, please take it, you're saying, what demand already exists independent of the thing that I want to create?
Hmm.
So you can't be thinking about them at the same time.
Right.
Where's the demand for the thing I want to create? No, 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 no. Where is the demand? What is the current demand in the marketplace? And then within that constraint, within that like circle or niche or however you want to describe it, then you can start thinking about what you can create that serves the existing demand in the marketplace. And if and when you do that, that is when things become easy because there's already demand for the thing that you're going to make. So you're going out to the marketplace knowing that there's at least one person, there's at least an audience of people that already want what you're doing. So let me give you a short example how it's played out in my own life. Man, almost 10 years ago, I had this idea for a script. And I was kind of tired of the traditional way. I had a business partner. I was in a video production company running it together. And we were writing scripts. We wrote half a dozen screenplays, like a bunch of TV pilots, and we tried to get them made, just like everybody done. That's the short version of supply side. We were making stuff and then trying to supply it to the marketplace. I was tired of it because it wasn't working. And it had been like 8 years that I've been trying to force my supply into the marketplace. So I had an executive producer friend that had kind of come into our ecosystem, was a big supporter on our Patreon because we had a YouTube channel and a Patreon page, and we were doing the creator thing. So I go to her and I say, "Hey, I have this idea for a movie. Can I tell you about it?" She goes, "Yeah." So I pitch her the log line, like the two sentence, "Here's the thing." And she goes, "Who have you told about this?" I was like, "You, like you're the one." I haven't even told my business partner about this idea because I want to write this movie myself and I didn't want to tell him. So I was like, "Just tell me what you think." She's like, "Do not tell anyone else about this. I want this and I want to help you develop the screenplay." And then we did. We developed the screenplay over 3 or 4 weeks.
Awesome.
And it was like, well, that was a very different experience. What happened there? What happened was I asked if there was demand first, and then I supplied the demand. And so I have not written another screenplay since 2016. A, because I became a producer, and so now I'm part of my job is to champion really good scripts and good writers. But also, it just highlighted that supply side doesn't work.
Yeah.
One caveat, if you're starting out, yes, you need to understand and learn your craft. And so you should write screenplays, but maybe remove the element of this screenplay has to sell in order for me to be successful.
Yeah.
No, if you write a screenplay, you're successful because you did the job of a writer. The job of a writer is to write. So it's a producer's job to find the market and the demand and do all the business stuff to get your screenplay into the market. But again, I even said that improperly. It's not about getting your screenplay into the market. The producer's job is to understand the demand that already exists and then go find
Perfect.
screenplays that can fill that demand. That's how I see my job now. So
Excellent.
big idea and a big mindset shift for creators.
Love it, man. You're like echoing my thesis and my hypothesis over the last 25 years of filmmaking myself in the independent space. Not all the time full time, but have been able to do it full time over about a 6 year period. That is what I came to know that is true. That is the truth. There are unicorns, we all know that, where Tarantino comes out of the woodwork and gives the audience something they're completely like not expecting, and they love him for it. But that's Tarantino, right?
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about the producer role. I totally appreciate that's where you're at. That's actually where I'm at as well. And getting the development of it. Oh, sometimes a filmmaker is not sure where to go next. I've been talking to a lot of filmmakers recently, and that's one of the pain points is, I have this idea. Most of them figure out online how to write a script. That's not hidden information. And they go, but where do I take it from here? What do I do? And so let's talk about maybe a film business plan kind of template or business plan, or even better yet, I have another producing partner of mine who he's all about lookbooks, not business plans. And the differentiating factor in my mind are really a lot of the financials, the pro forma things of that nature that you would find in a business plan. That's an expectation. A lot of times people, because film is a visual medium, they want to understand tone and sequence. What are you really talking about? These are not the investor tape that are just focused on ROI. These are also your filmmaker friendly people, whereas a business plan is more of that blue ocean investors never invested in film. They are going to want to see ROI, et cetera. But can you talk a little bit about business plan or lookbook or both if you like?
Yeah. There's some good stuff in there. So the legend has it that there was a moment in time where Stephen King was at a convention or at a speaking gig and opened it up to audience Q&A. And someone stands up and says, "Mr. King, can you please tell me what type of pencil you write with?" And the the takeaway there is it's not about the tools.
Right.
And so people, I'm actively raising money right now for a film fund. So I'm very much in this conversation on our own podcast called Truly Independent. We just did a whole thing about business plans, like a whole episode about what are the 8 things a business plan needs. And I started the conversation with, do not spend time hiding in the creation of your business plan or your lookbook or
That's
your pitch deck or your document or whatever. Substitute whatever it is that you're hiding in. Because what you need to be doing is going out to the marketplace and testing for demand. That's it, right? Just what we talked about. So that's why I lay the groundwork of supply side and demand side because it
yeah,
always applies to everything else. So, should you do a lookbook versus a business plan versus a financial thing? Do you need to hire a line producer to do a budget and schedule for you? Blah, 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 right? There's a million people on LinkedIn, on social media, online that will sell you the tools
yeah.
and not guaranteed, but with the subtext of if you get this tool, it will help you get the outcome. That's just not how it works because it's ignoring the natural laws at play, which are supply and demand. So instead, what I ask filmmakers to do is come up with the smallest experiment that can get you more information.
Mm.
So, what does that look like? Well, the story I shared a log line with the market, with an individual that represents the marketplace. And that was a small enough experiment in order to get information, which was, yes, there's demand here, a lot of it. So what's the smallest thing you can do so that you're not hiding in the process of, ooh, I need to create this new website that has this really cool, dynamic, awesome, flowing, moving, animated lookbook. I've seen so many of those and they're awesome.
You're cool.
Do they change the inherent demand that I have for that thing?
Right.
No, they
Right.
do not.
Mm.
If I'm looking for, let's call it an R-rated thriller
Hmm.
about XYZ, if I'm already looking for that and you show me this really, really cool website, thank you. That makes it so much easier for me to know that you're someone that will help me get the outcome that I want. That speaks to the demand that I have. But that doesn't matter until you've already connected with someone who's already looking for what you have. So before you build the business plan, before you do the lookbook, before any of those things, this is a long way of saying I don't have an opinion. I don't have an answer. Which one works better?
Yeah.
Because the only way I would know is if I knew who you've already talked to and the demand that exists and what are they asking for.
Yeah.
So I didn't create a business plan for my pitch for my film fund. I have a strategy document because it's more readable than a business plan. I hate business plans. They're boring. They're legalese.
Right.
They're like, where's the creativity in this? And until an investor asks me for a business plan, I didn't create one. And then they finally said, well, cool, let me send me your documents. And so I sent over the pitch deck, right?
Mhm.
Because that was a smaller experiment than a business plan. Business plans are, I don't know, 30 pages long. They have all these sections and they're required and blah, blah, blah. And they look a certain way. Pitch deck can be whatever I want. And I went in and made a template and did it in a day. And it was a
Yeah.
tiny experiment. And so most investors are okay with just talking to me and looking at the pitch deck. A couple of them started asking for a business plan. So I sent them a strategy doc. And they go, this was really cool. I actually enjoyed reading it. It's like, yeah, you didn't want a business plan. That's shorthand for tell me more. I need more information. So I sent them a strategy document, which is a Google Doc, which means I can update it anytime I want by just going in and editing
Yeah.
it.
I like
And
it.
then I send them a link and they go,
Yeah.
that was really cool. I understand the vision and the mission and how you're going to do it. That's what they want. So then they go, great, thanks. They don't keep asking for a business plan. There's a lot of words to say, I don't know which one's
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it does warrant, it depends on what the industry or the audience is asking you for. And you have to, by the way, Darren, I've never taken this many notes from somebody on my podcast. You're hitting like all my sweet spots as well that I'm very much in right now in my brain. Um, really good advice. I'd say the same thing. Like if you have someone that says this is the thing you need, i.e. the tool, they're selling you something because they don't know until they hear your story, what it's about. Then I can tell you, okay, maybe you need to go here and do this and do that. But if they're just trying to sell you a tool, well, then that's just the tool that they think can hammer the thing you need. And maybe it can, maybe it cannot, but it is a sales pitch at that point. what advice would you give indie filmmakers now in 2025 in our challenging times, how to navigate this? How would you navigate as an indie filmmaker in today?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's one of the biggest questions I have right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm doing that, but I'm also trying to be a guide for others.
Mm,
And so it's top of mind for sure. So thank you for asking that question. And a lot of it I'm kind of processing in real time now. So I don't have like
yeah.
answers that I've given before because it's the first time I've been able to talk to somebody about it. So first step is to understand where you're standing. Like I was actually at a retreat this week with my friend Carl Richards. So I need to throw his name out there because a lot of these ideas come from talking with him over the last few days about this exact topic.
Mm,
Um,
perfect.
so he's a backcountry skier. Like he lives in Park City and he's driving an hour to get to the backcountry to be on not uncharted, but like be the first one on the mountain
Yeah.
to break a new line. And he has to think about the terrain underneath his feet, right? Because if he wanders into terrain that's avalanche territory, then he's in danger by nature, right? So part of what he does is before he even sets out, he decides, where am I going? Let me understand the terrain. Let me have the tools that I need in order to get to the place where I want to go safely, so I'm not at risk. So, like that, you can apply that directly to indie film, right? Part of it is that we're trying to do too much all at once. We want to understand, how does my idea turn into a movie in the marketplace that makes buku bucks?
Mm,
Okay, well, that's 18 months minimum, right? It's probably more like 2 to 3 years
yeah.
because if you're at the idea stage, you don't even have a script that can start
Right.
being developed, right? So it's like chunk it down. Step one is chunk it down. Where are you, and what is the next smallest step?
That's
And
right.
is it going to keep you safe or is it going to put you into more uncertain territory? So you're constantly going, okay, instead of thinking, how do I get this film in theaters making $10 million? How do I go from idea to like a more fleshed out story that I can then talk to people about and just focus on that until it's done? And so you're constantly thinking, what is the next smallest step? It might be scary. You might be hiding. You might be stuck because what you've done is you've made it this big, giant thing that is, it's impossible for anyone, whatever level of producer they are, to say, oh, I know the exact steps you're going to take from idea to massive blockbuster theatrical release. You can always say, well, I knew what the steps are in hindsight. And you kind of have maybe a vague idea of, oh, you're going to develop the thing, and I have a good idea for who you can work with, and then you're going to finance it this way, and then you're going to produce it here, and then you're going to, right? But there's still vague steps. They're like six big steps you're going to take. Well, the process of making a film is millions of little steps taken by hundreds of people. And
Mm,
it's impossible to know what step the gaffer is going to take 12 months from now to light this scene perfectly. But that's a decision and a step that has to happen along the way. If you focus on that now, it's analysis paralysis, right? It's saying, I don't know how to make this business plan before I've even made the idea into something tangible.
yeah.
And so you're hiding. It's because it's scary. So, like, how do you do it? The answer is take this next smallest step.
Mm,
Keep that end in mind that maybe you're going to make $1 million movie and you want a $10 million box office. Is that unreasonable? Who cares? If that's what you want, then that's what you want. Like go after it. But don't stress about how you're going to get people into like what theater chains you're going to work with and what ticketing platform you're going to choose when you're at the logline stage.
right.
Like, yes, those decisions need to happen sooner the better, but don't let them stop you from making the next smallest step toward the goal.
Yeah, totally agree. Yeah, and are you familiar with the agile process? It's
I
usually
don't
in
think so.
IT. So it's taking waterfall is the old method. It takes forever. You say you want something, they do everything, they get it 100% right, deliver it to you, and it takes about a year and a half. By the time they get it to you in today's time, it's completely old. So agility says, do a little thing, send it out, get feedback, iterate on that, make changes, send it back. That, in my mind, is what I'm screaming from the rooftops that we need to bring filmmaking into.
Hmm.
It needs to be more agile. And so
Yeah.
that's part of my mantra lately. And it's that what you just described is agility. You're breaking the big thing. I want to get this in theaters to how do I get there? The chunks. What are the subtasks that I need to do? And that is exactly right. Um, I like to ask this question because we're all filmmakers and filmmaker fans at heart. Who do you think is making the best films right now, and perhaps why? And also, who are you a fan of? Like, who do you just like and emulate? And when you see their name up, you're like, you know what? I'm seeing that movie. I don't even care what the trailer is. I'm seeing that. Do you have anybody that you're a diehard loyal?
Yeah. I mean, if you're watching the video of this, like Edgar Wright is the guy. So these are posters my wife made of the Cornetto trilogy.
Awesome.
Those are like the cream of the crop. Those are peak filmmaking for me. I love Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg's writing. I love the attention to detail that he has as a filmmaker. I don't know if you ever saw Baby Driver, but like
Yeah.
the opening scene where the music is synced to every step and it's a one take, like the level of craft, not just by Edgar, but by the entire team
Yeah.
to pull off a shot like that, and then they do it multiple times in this movie, like unreal, like God level, if you're talking in those kind of terms, just like I can't even process the amount of developing that shot that went into it in order to pull it off. Like it's
Yeah.
beyond what I could
Oh, yeah.
realistically comprehend as a producer who's been in this world for almost 20 years. Like, so I really look up to Edgar Wright. Um, sorry, can you give me the other question again so I can make sure I'm hitting
Yeah,
it right?
yeah. Who do you think is making the best films right now and why?
Ah,
And who are you a fan of? So I think you kind of answered the fan of, but is there anybody else making the best films now?
as far as filmmakers or companies or anything's fair
Yeah,
game.
wide open. Yep.
I think in terms of what we've been talking about, I think Blumhouse is a model that's really interesting
They're in my pitch deck.
because they
Definitely.
tapped into a demand that existed and then they just constantly meet that demand. And they
Awesome.
never really got, I shouldn't say never, but from the outside looking in, it looks like they haven't gotten greedy in the sense of, oh, we did it and it succeeded, and so let's do it 10 times bigger. So they've kept for, I don't know, 15 years, however long it's been, this idea of let's just make movies for $5 million dollars or less. And look at what they've done. They've bent the will of the marketplace. They've taken the studio model and said, well, we don't do that.
Yeah.
So we're not going to pay $20 million dollars for an actor to be in our movie and hope that that turns into ticket sales down the line.
Yeah.
They're saying, well, we make movies this way. And they flipped the balance between supply and demand. So here's those concepts again. There's
Yeah.
this big idea of being oversubscribed, and that's the only way to be profitable is if you can get oversubscribed, meaning there's more demand than you have supply or capacity. So if they say, look, we're making a new movie and there's a great role and there's one of them, all of a sudden, if there's 8 actresses and Jennifer Lopez is one of them, they flipped the script, right? What we typically do as indie filmmakers is we go out and we say, please, 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 please take our offer. That's the
Yeah.
most we could possibly give you. And they're saying, no, 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 we're not going to pay you the most. But if it works out, we'll pay you on the back end. And we're
Right.
honest about that. And we actually will do it. So you have Jennifer Lopez making $5 million dollars on a $5 million movie from the back end on something she got paid, I don't know, 75 to 250,000 or whatever for. So I love that model of what they're doing. And on the audience side, they really tapped into, oh, we're just going to keep delivering the same thing to the same audience, and we know that it's going to work. In that same breath, I actually think Hallmark is a good model to replicate because they're feeding 30 movies a year to the same audience of 25 to 65-year-old women who are at home watching TV and just want something clean and safe and fun and bubbly on in the background because it makes them feel good. That's an
Yep.
oversimplification of their audience, but there you go. Like they have figured out we can make 20, 30, 1 to 2 million dollar movies every single year, and they're basically the same movie. But guess what? They're profitable. And the people that work on those movies are fed because they're making 10 movies a year. So everybody knocks, oh, it's a Hallmark movie. It's like, do you know what you're actually saying? Like, have you created an engine that makes $60 million of spend every year profitable? Because
So
I
smart.
haven't.
Right.
So, so I love bringing that up because it kind of goes, wait, Hallmark? What are you talking about? Um, and then I would throw Pixar into the mix too because of how much time they devote to development and the idea of we're willing to break this and start over at any point if we come up with a better idea. It doesn't matter if we've already gotten to like the last stage of animation that costs the most money. If it's not serving the audience as well as this new idea, then we're not doing our job. So what we're talking about is they're in alignment with their values. They
Mm.
say, this is what we do. This is why we do it. This is how we do it. And we don't break from that unless there's a really good idea that expands what our values and mission is. And then it becomes part of our values and mission. So it's in alignment again. But instead, what you see often in the marketplace is people going, well, where's the money? Where can I extract the most value from the marketplace instead of provide the most value to the marketplace? And so that's where I'm not going to call out names but the studios and the streamers are doing that. They're going, how can I extract the most money? Which is the wrong approach in my mind for delivering art to a marketplace. It needs to be, here's something I created.
Yeah.
I believe it's valuable. I think it'll be valuable for you, and I hope you like it. And that's
Yeah.
value, that's service. Those are the things that I resonate with as opposed to, wow, that's a money grab. Man, why did they spend hundreds of millions of dollars on that thing that nobody wanted?
Yeah.
Because they had tax reasons that we don't even understand
No,
that make it
exactly.
work for their bottom line. Why did they shelve that movie and
Mm.
that everybody said
So
was
horrible.
amazing?
Mm.
Why did they shelve it? For tax reasons. Is that serving the audience? No,
Right.
it's all about extracting value and protecting the downside and blah blah blah. Now you
Well,
know who
that's
I'm talking about. But
yeah.
that's ultimately what it comes down to and how I choose who those favorites are and who's doing it well. It's like whose values align with mine, and that's kind of step one.
Yeah, exactly. And I also you would even would say that it hits like a tipping point with the studios. At least it seems to me on the outside. Again, I'm not trying to throw stones. There's a lot of stuff Hollywood does extremely well, Hollywood being studios and streamers. But they do seem like they keep backpedaling a little bit in a panic and are just reactionary. And so they are reacting to me, it seems, in a negative way very quickly to things instead of trying to engage the audience and giving them what they want. They're trying to predict through data analysis. They're not engaging us. And I think that's where the balk starts to come from. When you get Uber fans about an IP and they don't respect the IP, I mean, that's right out the gate. You're going to lose those core people that you should at least hit. You end up losing some of them.
Yeah.
Um, I think of as an independent, the smaller things get, the bigger my world becomes. And what I mean by that is it seems like the global market has really become a crucial element within the sales of filmmaking. I made more money internationally on my one of my films than I ever did domestically, and I was grateful for it. And I'll give you an example. I met this young team down in Thailand that does visual effects on par with Hollywood at like a hundredth of the cost. Super nice guys, extremely talented. And I have them in my back pocket. With that in mind, how critical is the international market for filmmakers? And then a follow up, perhaps. Are you thinking, due to the economics, i.e., tax incentives, et cetera, are you thinking about co-productions overseas? So kind of
Yeah.
a twofer.
I hesitate to say that it's super important because then it just gives some filmmakers another place to hide of like, well, I don't know international
Mm,
distribution, so now I can't make my
nice.
movie because it won't
Yeah.
be profitable.
Mm,
So, yes, the more market that you can tap into where demand exists, that's a good thing. Um, internationally, I'm looking at a lot of that. Like as I started talking about my film fund, I had production companies and tax incentive people like from all over the world going, "Hey, you really got to look at this."
yeah.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Which was a cool thing that happened, and I think is a little micro story of what filmmakers can do is when you talk about your work online, the people who already have a demand for it show up. So what happened was I had people showing up on my calendar for an intro call to the fund who I'd never met before, but they saw that I was talking about it on the internet and they went to like on LinkedIn, they went to my blog and read my values and my mission and my story. And they're like, man, this is exactly what I'm looking for. I got to talk to this guy. They get on my calendar and then they show up and they go, hey, my name's Chuck and I want to be a part of your fund. I go, hi, Chuck. Have we talked before? They're like, no, I just found you on LinkedIn. You're like, okay, so there's a little micro story for people of like testing the
Awesome.
demand by
Yeah.
talking about what you're doing.
Yeah.
But yes, the movie, let's see, which way am I pointing? There's a movie I did 2, 3 years ago called The Carpenter, and we filmed it out in Cape Town, South Africa, with a production company out there,
Cool.
the company that had done the movie Samson. And so it
Cool.
was a kind of similar time period set at the time of Christ movie. It definitely is a faith-based movie, but it's got like parkour chases and MMA fighting in it. So it's maybe a faith-based movie for bros. But
Well,
like it's a movie that was funded by a family and was brought to us and said, figure this out. And we said, okay, well, we could shoot it in Texas where they shoot The Chosen. We could shoot it in Morocco because there's a set there. Where else is available? And there was this set that was built for the TV show of Kings and Prophets,
hmm.
and that show lasted a season instead of the six they were preparing for. So it was just kind of there, and we went and scouted it, and we're just like, oh, this is where our movie takes place. And so we filmed
Awesome.
it there. And we were able to make a movie that looked 3 times the budget because of the production value we got. So yes, when you get to a level where you can do those things, absolutely be looking at tax incentives and production companies all over the world and what's the best fit for the thing you have. Um, I want to quickly, though, touch on this idea of oversubscribed when it comes to the distribution side, because that's what you were talking about with international. I think what the big mistake the industry has made is modeling after the music industry. Like what
Hmm.
happened to music industry is they devalued music. They said, "Oh, you can instead of spending $20 or 17.99 for 17 songs on a CD or an actual album like an LP of vinyl, $25." They lowered the price. They said, "Oh, you can get a song for $1. Oh, you can get a song for $12 a month. You can get unlimited songs for $12 a month." Okay, well, what's the value of a song now? How much does it cost? It's free. It's essentially free. So good job, guys. We made music completely devalued. And then the streamers went, "Ooh, let's do that." So Netflix said, "Oh, instead of going to a movie to watch it, like in paying 15, $20 a ticket, watch it online and you can watch 10,000 movies, 100,000 unlimited movies." I mean, it's at the point where I think if I were to watch every single hour of every single day for the rest of my life, I couldn't watch everything that's on Netflix. So,
Right.
in a sense, it's unlimited movies for the rest of my life. And oh, I have 6 other platforms that I could do the same thing
Right.
on,
Right.
right? So, we devalued film. We said instead of going to the movies and spending $20 a ticket plus all the popcorn and soda, you can watch it for free in your living room. And so now what's the value of a movie? Are people buying DVDs anymore? No. And everybody cites that Matt Damon clip on Hot Ones where he's just like lamenting the fact that that marketplace is gone. That's what the studios and streamers did. They completely wiped out the exchange of value for the thing we're making. And so to me, the studio and streamer ecosystem is very unfriendly for independent filmmakers. How are you supposed to make your money back? Because, yeah, years ago, Netflix would give you 6 figures to license your movie for a few years. Not anymore. They will give you a share of the dollars that they make for every hour watched. And so now you have to have 1 billion hours in order to make $10 million dollars or whatever the math works out to. It's just impossible. So, the reason is because there is infinite supply for the demand that exists. So you will never have the proper balance between supply and demand. Now, let's quickly venture back to music because there is a model that makes sense to be insanely profitable. Now, let's look at Taylor Swift. She had a tour where there were limited number of shows and limited number of seats. So there was an official capacity. There was an amount of things available to the marketplace. And what happened to the price? It skyrocketed.
Got up.
And she's made somewhere between a billion and $4 billion. Insane, like 4x
Mhm.
the next
Sure.
most profitable tour ever, which was like Rolling Stones or U2 or something like that. Because She limited the supply and demand. And then she did something even smarter, not even smarter, but also smart, which was work with AMC, cut out the middleman of the distributor and said, "Hey, AMC, do you want to do this thing? We'll just release this tour movie in your theaters. And if you don't want it, I'll go to Cinemark or Regal or whatever." So again, limited supply. And she knew that there was going to be demand for more than one theater
Oh yeah.
chain.
Oh
So she
yeah.
goes to AMC, they do a deal, $150 million box office on a thing that probably cost her $1 million to make. Crazy, right? So the reason she's able to be profitable is because she is in control of the supply and demand. If she limits the supply so that it's below the level of demand, and because it's Taylor Swift, the demand is insane, she can have tickets selling for $1,200. She can extend her tour. She can make a movie that goes into theaters. So we got to think more like Taylor Swift. And what that means is if your distribution strategy is, I'm going to put this thing on a platform, a streamer where the supply is unlimited, right? Because like every single person on the planet could go to Netflix and watch your movie right now. There's no cap on the supply. It's unlimited supply, which means it's impossible to get demand to be outsized. There's no chance in on the earth to make the demand go above infinite or unlimited.
Hmm.
So I'll just stop there and say you've got to figure out as an independent film producer how to shift that demand back in your favor, where you can say, oh, the demand is greater than the supply. Now I can actually be profitable.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. I had a distribution deal with one of the streamers and really low ball. It was early in the days, extremely low ball. And before you know it, they had given me this little amount, but their ability to saturate the market was huge. And then I had all these friends coming up saying, "Oh my gosh, I saw your movie for free online." Now I'm like, it wasn't free. They pay a subscription,
Right.
but in their mind, right? That devaluing in their mind, and they were able to saturate the market. And so what I thought was a good thing in the beginning ended up being a very hard lesson of like, wow, they like destroyed my domestic profit because they were able to saturate the market. They lowballed it, and bingo, we ended up, you know, with the
Yeah.
deal we got, and a learned lesson. Um, I love to ask this question, and I truly am not trying to fall either way. I would love to get your perspective on it. And you're a seasoned filmmaker, so I want you to maybe think of it like right now and then where it may be going. Does star power still matter? Does star power still matter?
I would say not in an environment where supply is unlimited. So take case in point, what came out yesterday? A movie called The Electric State with Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown. $320 million estimated budget. Now they saved maybe a little bit on a big marketing budget of 100 or 200 million because they didn't put it in theaters. But there is zero tension for me to go spend money to watch it. A, it's free. B, it's a Netflix original. So inherently, I know it's not going to ever go away. So there's no time constraint on when I need to see it.
Mm-mm.
And there you go. So same thing happened with Red One with Dwayne Johnson and who was the other guy in that?
Ryan Reynolds?
Ryan Red. Red One. Yeah, was it? I don't remember. Who cares?
Yeah.
Not the point.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Chris Evans, I think.
You're
Um,
right. Chris Evans.
but
Yeah.
like you knew because it was Amazon Prime that was making it that it was going to end up on Amazon Prime. And so you're just like, well, there's no tension created by the situation for me to go, oh, I have to see this now. Now, what happened a few weeks ago here in Utah? Actually, an even better idea. I live in Utah. Years ago, there was a theater in LA that did a full day. It was like $75, and they played all three of the Cornetto trilogy that are the posters behind me, the three Edgar Wright movies
Fun.
that
Yeah.
he made early on in his career. And they said, we're going to play these back to back to back. You're going to get a poster, and you're going to be able to eat Cornettos in between each movie. And it's one day only, and there's 400 seats. They sold out, yes, but the tension of me
Yeah.
and my friend Alan, who we loved these movies, he's the one that introduced them to me. Like we bought tickets and then drove from Utah to LA,
Good grief.
spent an entire day in a theater, paid the money for the hotel and the food and the gas and the time away from work to do that.
Yeah.
Now, you do that, you can do that at scale. You could say, well, what is the demand in the marketplace for that sort of event? Maybe it's 100 theaters or 100 cities. Okay, if you just did that 100 times over however long period of time, I bet they made more money doing, I bet they could make more money doing that at $75 a ticket than a re-release and putting it in 1,000 theaters where there's way more supply in 1,000 theaters with 500 seats each or 200 seats each across 10 screenings a weekend. You know what I mean? So
Totally.
I think to answer your question, star power, sorry, I diverted a little bit
All
there,
right.
but star power is only going to be valuable in a situation where there's some sort of constraint on time or availability or numbers of seats that makes it so, oh, there's tension now that I need to resolve. If I want to see that, I have to do it this way, this time for this many dollars, or else I don't get to see it. That's the Taylor Swift model. If I want to go see her in Salt Lake, I would have had to spend $1,500 because by the time
Mm.
I figured out it was already sold out and now we're
Yeah.
in resale territory. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, that's the difference. And so yeah, are Chris Pratt and Millie Bobby Brown valuable? I don't know. How do you define it? Can they get enough profit for Netflix? I don't even know if that's the point. If they did it in theaters, would it have worked? I don't know because everybody would have said, "Oh, I'll see it on Netflix in 2 months." So again, it just points to the economy, the ecosystem, the marketplace of Hollywood studios and streamers is so unfriendly to independents because they have spent billions of dollars getting really good at extracting money and value from filmmakers.
Mm. Man.
And I'm
Yeah.
trying to say this in like a happy, cheerful way, even though it's really gross and terrible. Like
Yes.
the industry sucks because of those decisions,
Mm.
because they instead of investing in filmmakers and investing in developing people, craftspeople and artists and actors and filmmakers, they've said, "Ooh, how can we extract value from this?
Mm.
How can we take as much and give them as little as possible and then keep it going?" And so it's akin to avalanche territory.
Mm.
We're every time that we try to have a conversation with a studio or streamer as an independent filmmaker, we're walking on potential avalanche. Like we are one step away from another avalanche that leads to a strike or a shutdown or a whatever. And it,
Yeah.
it's is it life or death? Kind of, because there are people who will either stay alive in the industry
Mm.
or leave the industry if it keeps up because it's unsustainable. So let me get off my soapbox there. But
Wow.
did I answer your question? I hope
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Man,
Absolutely.
I went
Absolutely.
all over the place there.
I don't know. It's I think it's an essential kind of thinking around it. And it does kind of go back to supply, demand, like you're saying, time, availability. You were willing to get in the car with a buddy, drive, a state over or a couple states over, and good gracious.
Yeah. Ooh,
And was it,
let me add
yeah,
one quick thought there,
yeah,
just to kind of really put let me beat this dead horse one more time. The value of celebrity has
yeah.
gone down in the last decade. Why? And my answer would be social media.
Hmm.
Because before social media, the only way you had access to celebrities, these mysterious people that you don't really know anything about, is by going to the movies or
Hmm.
seeing them on a TV show or
Yeah,
reading about them in like People magazine,
yeah.
right? That was the only access. So the demand you had for information or whatever about them was higher than the supply. You had to wait for next month's issue to see what Brangelina was doing, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it was next week's issue, but still, not the point. But now you have access 24/7 to the entire 10-year history of everything every single celebrity has ever posted. And so, how can demand outweigh that type of supply? If there's 10,000 videos of Dwayne The Rock Johnson working out, at some point your demand is going to be below the supply, and then it becomes less valuable. And so all of a sudden they did it to themselves,
Mm.
but the industry did it to them, this industry of social media. And so I think you still have some celebrity with like Christopher Nolan. He's not on social media. So like how do you learn about how he thinks or what he does or what breakfast he eats? You don't. And so the demand that you have to learn and have a connection to Christopher Nolan is greater than the supply that is in the marketplace. But you look at all the celebrities that have these massive social media accounts, and every single time they post, they make it harder to have the balance between supply and demand because what they're doing is adding more supply
Yeah.
instead of increasing demand. The best thing I think, well, I'm getting outside of my territory here, but like I wonder what would happen to Chris Pratt's brand if he got off social media. Would it make him more valuable or less? I don't know. I'll just pose that question and let you
Yeah.
guys think
Great.
about it.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, because it is the supply and demand. Um, any life-changing books, podcasts, or behind the scenes that you would recommend for filmmakers to go out and check out? Books, podcast, or BTS?
Yeah. Anything that Daniel Priestley has written. So he's also up on these on my shelf back there. He wrote a book called Oversubscribed. He wrote a book called Key Person of Influence. And so those are principles that I try to follow and I talk about because I think they're such tried and true business principles that part of my mission is to take the good books and podcasts and stuff that I read and not consume. I hate that word for consume content, the things that I'm learning from my mentors, whether they know it or not, they're my mentor. I try to reframe and synthesize for the filmmakers that I'm trying to serve. So absolutely need to read Oversubscribed. If you want to have more opportunities to start flowing into your life, read Key Person of Influence. I'm a big fan of Seth Godin as a thinker. I think he just highlights principles and talks about them. He's not giving you tactics, but again, it's not about the tactics and the tools. It's not about what pencil should I write with. It's about how should I think about this? How
Hmm.
should I navigate this terrain? So he has, I don't know, 20 books at this point, and I would read all of them. Um, who else? Carl Richards, who I mentioned earlier, he has a podcast, a daily podcast called Behavior Gap. And that's 5 minutes of Carl in my mind every single day. And so when he talks about things like navigating avalanche territory, I'm perking up and I'm listening. And I'm lucky to call him a friend. I was at his house the last 2 days at a retreat that he hosted, and it was amazing. And to sit there and to just see him in his element, helping other people, it was amazing. So
Awesome.
those guys, and I've had a business coach for 5 years now. I've used Tony Robbins business coaching, but I've had someone to kind of keep me in check. And I think the greatest value of a coach is you can say, look, here are the things that I say I value. Call me out on my BS anytime that I'm acting in out of alignment with those values. And so if I show up next week and I go, yeah, I really value blocking my time and making progress on these three projects towards these three goals. And I get there and she goes, hey, how did it go? And I go, oh, I had a rough week. She goes, well, why? And then now I'm sitting there with like, oh, I need to own this. I can't just do that and it's okay. And so even just having a person who can call you on your BS when you're out of alignment with the things that you say are valuable to you, that's really, really awesome. Um, yeah, and podcasts, I've really enjoyed any type of deep dive podcast. So I love when Tim Ferriss talks to creators. Like he just had Brandon Sanderson on. That's a
Oh,
great
cool.
episode
Oh, cool.
to watch because it's like a 3.5 hour episode
That's
of
fun.
Tim talking about Brandon Sanderson and how he does this amazing creative work and writes books and
Crazy.
makes millions of dollars every year as a
Love
as
that.
an author. Um, the Diary of a CEO is a great podcast where they do deep dives, 2 hour long podcasts with creative people, business people mainly. But I think anytime filmmakers can listen to business podcasts or read business books, it's going to benefit you in the long run.
100%. Yeah, I read a lot of business books. I used to, I kind of went through the gauntlet of the filmmaker book, and not that I'm above that. If there is a good one, I definitely want to hear about it. But business is where I've been spending my time.
Yeah. I
Um,
should I
yeah,
shouldn't miss this opportunity to plug
please.
the book that I just wrote,
Please do.
because the book you write is actually the most impactful one that you ever have any interaction with,
Absolutely.
because you have to synthesize your thoughts and your principles and the things. So, a quick aside, if I may, is I
Right.
wrote this book called Blockbuster: How Independent Creators Can Build Massively Profitable Businesses. And it's like 30 chapters with these principles, but I actually put out all into a framework that you can systematically work through called the movie framework. So I'm inordinately happy with the Blockbuster title and the movie framework. It's very on brand. But like, if anyone listening to this podcast is going, man, I want to figure this stuff out and apply it, that's where I would point you. So, and that
Awesome.
honestly, over the last 2 years that I've been writing and putting this book out in the world, that's been super impactful just to go, do I really believe this stuff, or am I just parroting what other people said?
Mm.
And I had to go, well, what's my lived experience with this so that it's true? And when I got to the end and 200 pages later, I'm like, oh, wow, this is something I'm really proud to put out in the world because I know it's going to help people.
Awesome, man. No, I was definitely going to ask you that before we hopped off, but since we've kind of broached it, is it on Amazon, and do you have a website for it? Give me kind of the whole rundown. Like, where can people find it?
It's not on Amazon, and I want to see why you think I would make that decision.
Yeah, no, what a great call out. I too have been kind of noodling around getting my thoughts down in a book, and it seems like the data points to Amazon, but there are other platforms I'm also looking at, frankly. There's a new one called Kafka, which is an audio book that's going head to head against Audible.
Hmm.
And I really like their platform and I like the team behind it. So yeah, I would love to know, as someone who's about three-quarters of the way through a book myself, I'd love to get your kind of thoughts on it because you're ahead of the game. You're the guide in this story for me, so I could use the help.
Yeah, well, here's my take.
Yeah.
Similar to what we've been talking about this whole time about supply and demand. If I put it on Amazon, infinite supply, there's no chance that I will ever get outsized demand. Second, like that's actually secondary though, because the first reason I'm not on Amazon is because I want the relationship with the reader.
Mm. Mm.
And whether it's Amazon, whether it's Netflix, whether it's whatever, Apple Music, Spotify, you build an audience on there and you're building an audience for that
Mm.
platform. They are not your audience.
They own it.
And so you're essentially building on rented land,
Yes.
and they could evict you at any moment. Like you look at people who've been kicked off YouTube or had their Facebook fan pages switched over from free to paid distribution. Like the platforms can do whatever the heck they want whenever they want, and they are not concerned about how it's going to impact your business. And so, what if I want to sell my book for $20? What if I want to make $10 every time I sell a book? It's impossible to do that on Amazon. They will not allow it. I'd have to charge like $60 because you get like 15 or 20% if you go above a certain price point. It's it's the same thing I was saying. It's not friendly to independence.
Mm.
So if I had the kind of audience like a James Clear where I think I'm going to sell 10 million copies of a book, sure, right? Because then it's like actually what I do. It's my core product. My core product is producing independent films, not writing books. So I don't care if I actually make money selling this book. What I care about is the relationship with the filmmaker. So I use this book as a business card, as a lead magnet. Whenever someone signs up for my website, like to join my email list, I send them a link where they can read the book online. So if you go to craftsmanfilms.co, you can get a free copy, like you can read the entire book online for free, because I would rather have the relationship with you, the email address, to be able to say, hey, thanks for buying this. Now I know who you are. And I can continue to give you value over the next 20 years or however long I'm going to be doing this stuff. And I think there's going to be more value from the next 20 years than the 84 cents that I would have gotten from Amazon because they priced it at $1.99 this weekend for whatever reason that I had nothing to do with.
Yeah.
So, no, this book is not and will never be on Amazon. I sell it directly to my audience. So if you go to store.craftsmancreative.co, that's like Craftsman Creative is the brand for like all the writing and that kind of stuff I do. Um, you can find it there. I wrote a book years ago called Craftsman Creative. That book's on there too. And there's a company called Lulu that prints my books on demand. And so I know that a few things are going to happen. I'm going to get the email address and the relationship with the person. I'm going to be able to ship them something in a way that it looks and feels the way that I want it to look and feel. And I'm going to have that relationship forever as until I do something where they go, I don't want this anymore, and they unsubscribe. But look at what's happened. Like, let's talk quickly about my last book. I've sold maybe 250 copies of that book in 3 years now. 3 years ago it came out. Is that a good thing? I don't know, but I've given away 1,000 copies, both digital and physical. Like the book came out, I was going to conferences and gifting 250 copies to a conference so that I could get a free ticket because like I was kind of a sponsor. And I'd say,
Yeah,
hey, let me just make your swag bag more valuable. And they said, cool, here's a ticket. Great. So I go to the conference. Sometimes I even got to speak at the conferences because I was just gifting copies of my book. But what would happen from that is people would come into my ecosystem because I'd put a little flyer in the book that said, hey, I'd love to know who you are. Send me an email. Tell me what you think of the book. And I'd give away 250 copies and 50 people would email me. And then there's a relationship, right? And in the first year alone of having that book, again, I sold 250 copies, which means I made like $1,000, $2,000 from the book. It cost me more to edit the book than I've made dollar wise directly selling the book. But that book represented $50,000 of client revenue over the next year
that's right. Yeah,
because people came to me as an authority going, I think you can help me with this problem. I said, yes, I
right.
can. Would you like coaching or consulting or a course or like whatever it was? I don't
Yeah,
have those things anymore. That's a business I've kind of shuttered in order to focus 100% on this film stuff. But same thing applies here. Instead of DMing an investor on LinkedIn, guess what? I'm going to send him a copy of my book and see how that goes.
yeah, right.
So there you go.
Yeah, that's some strong that's wisdom in the trenches right there, people. So yeah, definitely appreciate that, Darren. So this question is a totally selfish one, and frankly,
Awesome.
one I completely wrestle with. So this one's for me. How does one create longevity and find contentment in this industry?
Hmm. I think those
Longevity.
are two things, right?
Mhm.
How do you define longevity and how do you define contentment or fulfillment?
Yeah. For me personally, I do think it's an individual kind of basis. I'm a person of faith, so I would say that calling is something that really resonates with me. Why am I put on this earth? Why am I here? Am I doing the mission that I was called to do, to fulfill? And if I'm not, it would not be content. If I'm doing that, contentment seems to find me. And I'm trying to live in that because I'll tell you, one of the things that used to zap me is if I wasn't a full-time filmmaker, I wasn't living my calling. And that used to zap me every time. And I realized like that's a lie. That is a complete lie that people have put out there. And it's totally not true. Having a W-2, frankly, is responsible because I have a wife and 5 children and I'm able to pay my bills as a result. Longevity would be not a one and done filmmaker. Like I see those all the time and it kind of breaks my heart a little bit. And I don't want to be that either. I want to tell the stories that I'm intended to tell. And I just want to have longevity in the industry. And a kind of a business thinking is I want to provide extreme value to people, be it in story, be it the people that I work with. I just want to provide value. And in that, I think the output of that, the payment of that back to me is longevity.
Gotcha. So within that longevity description, you're saying you want to be able to receive a full-time revenue or a full-time income from that?
No, just more so to be able to, I never want to stop telling stories. Like
Gotcha.
you and I probably have even some friends in common. LinkedIn looks like a war zone. I've seen so many friends that have the green circle looking for jobs, and it hurts them. It's hurting me to see them have to go through this. And it's because they chose a creative path. And unfortunately, right now, the industry is in an upheaval and they're having to pivot. And I'm 52. So a lot of my peers are same age or similar age. So they're not pivoting in their 20s. They have families that are relying on them. And so longevity to me, in that context is, do I get to continue to tell stories? Because it would hurt me a little bit deep within my soul if one day I had to hang it up.
Yeah. So I would encourage you to get really clear on what that looks like. How do you know if you have longevity? Is it because you have enough money to make a certain type of project or a certain number of projects a year?
Right.
Like whatever those details are, essentially this is like live coaching, right? And I I
Yeah.
would I would spend the next hour defining what is longevity.
Mhm.
There's a great framework from Dan Sullivan. I actually wrote about it in my book. He talks about the four freedoms. I actually talk about five because he changed one of them out, and I was like, why not just add it to
Yeah.
five? Like,
Yeah.
but he talks about like defining the outcome in terms of four different types of freedom: freedom of time, financial freedom, relationships, like the type of people you work with and work for, and the type of people you're serving. And what was the fourth one? Location, I think, is one of them. Like, where do you want to work? And so I was just like, oh, purpose, freedom of purpose, like being able to focus on the work that you feel called to do. So I would spend some time just like free writing and thinking about how do you get even more clarity on that to where if you told somebody, here's what I'm after, do I have it or not? They have enough information to go, oh, yeah, you have it, or oh, no, you don't, right? So that's the longevity side. The contentment or fulfillment side, I love this other question from Dan Sullivan. This is a guy who runs a company called Strategic Coach. He works
Mhm.
with hundreds of like top level CEOs,
Oh yeah.
Elon Musk and Peter Diamandis and these kind of guys, right? So really smart guy. And he's been doing this for 30 years. He's like in his 70s now. And he has a question that I love. So I'm going to ask you this one too, which is if you fast forward and look at 3 years from now, in your career, in your life, not just business, but like in your life, what has to happen for you to be extremely happy with your progress? So that's the contentment fulfillment side. So I would journal or free write on that for 20, 30 minutes and go,
Yeah.
okay, just list everything. What has to be true with your kids, with your relationships, with your spirituality, with your finances, with your work, with every aspect of your life? What would have to be true for me to be insanely happy in 3 years? Not saying you're not now,
Mhm.
but just this is again going back to the very first thing we talked about. What's the destination? What's the outcome? Where are we headed? Because as soon as you know that, then you can start reverse engineering the path to get there. And it gives you a metric to weigh every single decision against. Will this help me get more of that I say I want in 3 years or 2 years or 1 year? And if the answer is no, then you can say no to that project. Is this opportunity or this relationship or this project or this decision going to get me closer to the thing that I say I want in 3 years? And if it's no, then you just say no. The longevity piece, though, I want to say one other thing about it, which is this another idea from Carl Richards. Profit equals permission.
Hmm.
So if we want longevity, if that's something we want, we could get it a couple ways. We can go to Netflix and beg them to let us direct their movies for the next 10 years, and that's a version of longevity. But are you profitable in that scenario? Maybe a little bit, but like you're not going to be insanely profitable because you don't own any of the upside, right? So that's a version of it, but there's another version probably for you that looks very different, where you could say, okay, how much profit do I need in order to greenlight myself?
Hmm.
In order to give myself the permission to keep making projects in the way that I say I want. And that's how I look at longevity. So when I was putting this film fund together, I said, what do I want it to look like? I said, well, I don't want to be a producer for hire anymore. I've done 4 movies. They've done okay, not as well as I think they could have done with some different decisions. And so I was like, all right, well, if I were to make different decisions, what would it take for me to be able to do that? And it basically quickly became, oh, I've got to own the whole thing. I've got to take responsibility for 100% of the process, everything from financing and development all the way through production post and marketing and distribution. I have to own it, at least take responsibility for it, because that's the only way I'm going to be able to make the decisions in each one of those phases of the filmmaking process. So I started from there. That became the destination. Okay, in order for me to have a film fund, how do I do that? And I just started working backwards. But to me, that's my answer for the longevity. It's like, oh, if I own more of the upside and have the equity portion, then I can keep generating profit, which gives me more permission and I can make more movies and help more people and stay in this for as long as I want. So profit equals permission. That's a good thing to think about when you think about the longevity piece, but put it in your own terms and define what does longevity look like and how much profit's it going to take.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I definitely wrote that down. Profit equals permission. So I'd love to hear. I think you kind of have talked about it. You of basically like what's next for you, what projects you might have coming up, and how can people support you? Find you. What's the best way to connect? But it sounds like you are well underway on a fund. You have your recent book that just came out. You also have a podcast. Is there anything else I missed? And what's the best way for people to connect with you? I'll make sure I also put it in the show notes.
Oh, thank you. Craftsmanfilms.co is the website. I'm writing every week. I'm putting a lot of effort into teaching people how to invest in indie films. So my audience for that is a very small niche of people. I was
Okay.
around a bunch of Canadians and they all say niche. And so I was like, oh no, am I saying it wrong? It's a very small niche of people. Like the very first post I wrote was how to visit set as an executive producer.
Nice.
Who's that post for? It's
Yeah.
for 5 people on the internet, but
Yeah.
still, what happened was, yes, the investors are paying attention because no one else is really writing content
Yeah.
for them.
Good.
But the filmmakers are showing up too because they're going,
Yes.
oh, wow, this is
I
no
need to
one
think
else
about
is
this.
writing
Yeah.
about this stuff. So they're sharing it with their executive producers.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
it's growing really well.
Good.
So craftsmanfilms.co is the website. That's everything is there. There's actually a cool little pop-up thing that I added just this last month, which is like it'll ask you 4 or 5 questions, and then it'll divert you to the right place in
Hmm.
my site. So
Fun.
if you're
Cool.
interested in film, but you're not a filmmaker, there's one way to go. If you're a filmmaker, it'll direct you to my book. If you're a investor, it'll send you even further and further down the rabbit hole because I built this kind of whole world around what if you wanted to be an independent film investor? Where do you go? How do
Hmm.
you learn that? There isn't a place on the internet for that.
No.
Well, what if
Exactly.
I built it? Well, what happens then is now I've got 200 people on an email address that are interested in the thing that I'm doing.
Yeah.
What happens when that's 2,000 or 20,000 or 200,000?
Probably make a difference.
Well, then I can give myself a lot of permission, right? I can say,
That's
"Hey,
right.
here's the next movie. Click here to invest."
Yeah.
And a percentage of those 20,000 people are going to do that. So that's where I'm headed with all that stuff.
Excellent.
The only place that you can connect with me online right now is LinkedIn. So don't find me on Instagram, don't find me on Twitter or X or whatever. I had to shut it all off to focus exclusively on one area until it worked. Because what we all do is we dabble, right? We go, oh, they say you got to be on every single platform and post 7 times a day and blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, how are you supposed to make any progress there?
Yeah.
The cycles
Oh, yeah.
are so long and so big to get anywhere. And so I just decided let's focus on one area and get that working. And for me, that means every day investors are showing up in my calendar or my email inbox. And as soon as that happens, then maybe I'll think about hiring a team and expanding the social media empire. But until then, I don't care. Like, I don't care about meta platforms. I don't care about what Musk is doing with X. Like, I just turned it all off, even though I had people there. It's like I gotta just
Yeah.
and LinkedIn is not a hellscape. So it's really
Yeah.
nice to be like, oh, this is safe here. I can just
Yeah.
talk to people about films. Like this is
Yeah.
nice. So
Yeah, and
those are the
LinkedIn,
two.
I thought has personally, I really feel like they've done a great job with kind of protecting the integrity of that because I
Yeah.
truly, initially in the early days, I thought it was just going to go the way of any other social media. But to my pleasant surprise, that has not been the case. Well, Daren, man, you've been awesome, brother. I know I've probably
Thank
taken
you.
up too much of your time, but I couldn't stop because the questions were flowing. I felt like we were in a zone. You were giving so much value, really speaking from not only experience, but from the heart with the intent of trying to help filmmakers, which is an ethos that I fully fall into myself. But I also learned a lot. Like I said, I've never taken this many notes before. So I applaud you for that, sir. And just thank you so much for your time. If you're a listener, of course, subscribe, like, but comment, please, for heaven's sake, so we know that you're out there and that we're reaching people and touching people. And you're part of our tribe, you're part of our network. Let us know, give us feedback. And remember, nothing is wasted, but do the next right thing. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you.